Hi, I'm Joseph Phillips. I'm the Director of Education at Instructing.com. In this little presentation, I want to share with you some of my thoughts that I use to get stuff done. GSD, get stuff done. So one of the first things that we think about getting things done, we have to know, well, what is done? What does done look like? Whenever I'm consulting and we're going into a project, one of the first questions I ask is, how do we know when we're done? How do we know we're successful? So what is that desired future state? Well, the same thing's true in our life. How do you know you're done with this goal, with this project, with this set of tasks that you are setting out to do? So what does that look like? So I want to see some vision of what that desired future state may be. Now, this all we're really talking about here initially is setting a goal of reaching that desired future state. And I'm sure if you've taken a goal setting course or time management course or read in the article, it seems lately, you've heard about SMART goals. Well, we're not going to get real deep into SMART goals. I think you probably know those, that goals have to be specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and they have to have a timetable. They're timely. So SMART goals are great. I use SMART goals. I think you should use SMART goals, but probably you've heard of that little nugget before. Then we get into prioritization techniques. When you have lots of things to do, some things are more important than others. So we want to prioritize goals, of course. So we prioritize which goal is most important all the way down to least important. Did you ever have one of those customers where you feel like, well, everything's important? Well, everything can't be important. Some things are more important than others. So prioritization is this idea of what will I tackle first in these different areas of goals. And then you take each goal, just like you would a project, and you break that down into small, manageable tasks. This idea of I'm going to do little things, and all these little things will work towards reaching the goal. And I have a video that you should watch as well coming up. I'll give a little teaser here about micro goals. So we'll talk more about that coming up. Right now it's about how to get things done. One approach that we could use is called the Eisenhower Matrix. Dwight Eisenhower has this idea of the Eisenhower Matrix that we think about, is this urgent or is this important? So we have these different quadrants for prioritization where we have important but not urgent. So let me just show you this matrix here. So this is the idea that we have urgent, not urgent, important, not important. So if we start in the lower left, if it's not urgent and it's not important, don't do it. Get rid of it, eliminate it. If it's urgent but not important, we want to delegate that stuff, get that off of our plate, assuming that you can delegate. In my life, I have an assistant that she does all the things that I don't want to do. No, that's not entirely true, but she does a lot of the things for me that aren't urgent to me, but they need to be done. So I delegate that out. And then we have things that aren't urgent, but they're important, but I don't have to do it today. So those I can manage, I can actually manage those. I can decide and schedule for later. Now, things that are important and urgent, kind of an emergency status, you want to do it now. So these are four quadrants. When you make that big list of all the things that you have to do, you can take those and plot those out like an affinity diagram. All right, is this urgent? Is it not urgent? Is it important or not important? So that's a great way if you've got a lot of things on your list to get done, helps you prioritize. Another approach that I actually do, I use this approach quite a bit, is called the Pomodoro Technique. Pomodoro comes from the idea of a tomato, but it's actually a tomato that serves as a kitchen timer, or a kitchen timer that looks like a tomato, I should say. So the idea is that you set the timer for 25 minutes. So you put everything else away, no phone, no email, 25 minutes of laser-like focus on a task. And that's called a Pomodoro. And so I just set 25 minutes on my phone, and I put my phone way over there so I don't look at it. I'm gonna focus on this task only for 25 minutes. And then when that buzzer goes off or my phone chimes, then we have a little bit of a break. So the idea is what we're going to see here of what a Pomodoro looks like. So you have 25 minutes of work, laser focused, then you just take a 5-minute break. So you go look at your phone, take a stretch, and then you do it again. 25 minutes of work, and then you have a 5-minute break. And we do it again, 25 minutes of laser-like focus, and you have a break. And then we do it one more time, 25 minutes of work and a 5-minute break. No, you get a 15 to 30-minute break after you do 4. And that's considered one Pomodoro cycle. So it looks pretty easy, but in reality, I was surprised at how tough this is to do well. But if I can do just 4 of these, 4 25-minute sessions, now I'm talking laser-like focus, not on the phone, no email, I'm just focusing on whatever project I have. It's amazing how much work I can get done. And so I start my day very early, and this is what I do in the morning. So I don't really have a lot of distractions because it is so early. In the afternoon, I kind of, probably like all of us, I get a little sluggish and wear down. It's harder to do in the afternoon. But for me, I can get basically 2 solid chunks of work in these little 25-minute segments. That seems easy, but it is challenging to do. But this is one way we can use to get stuff done. It's the Pomodoro Technique. Another approach that we can use is called the Eat That Frog principle. And it's based on a funny quote from Mark Twain that basically says, if you have to eat a frog every day, eat it first thing in the morning so that the rest of your day will get better. So the idea being, if there's something that you don't want to do, that you dread doing, you do it first thing in the morning and get it done. So when I have to go for that day to the gym, or I'm going for a big walk, or there's some task I don't want to do, I tackle that first thing in the morning whenever there's any dread. I get it over and done with, and the rest of my day is better. So it helps to overcome procrastination and really get your momentum going for the rest of the day. In the Pomodoro Technique, and you don't even have to use the Pomodoro Technique, you can do this just in your life, we have the idea of time boxing, of taking little chunks of time that are focused only for this type of work. So you would say, for example, between 7 a.m. and 8 a.m., that's when I do all of my email for the day. Or I'm gonna work on this presentation between 8 and 9. Or from 10 to noon, this is what I'm doing. So it's a way of just time boxing, of plotting out your day of what you're going to get done. And you already do this to some extent, I'm sure, if you do daily goals or weekly goals or even what's on your calendar for the month. So you can take chunks of time for specific types of work that you have to do often. So it really is for prioritizing and protecting that time for this type of work. So years ago, I used to have to consulted at a large insurance company, and I had reports and things that I have to manage and review things, but people would ask for meetings, and so my day would just be scattered. And so I began to block time on my calendar because I was in so many meetings talking to people, I couldn't get my work done and review reports and review project statuses and so on. So I used to block a couple hours every day that what I would do is I would say 11 to noon and then 1 to 2. So I had this 3-hour block there because of lunch was assumed, at noon. So it gave me a nice chunk of time to actually do my work. So I might have meetings and so on in the morning, but I knew from 11 to noon and then 1 to 2, I had lots of time there that I could work on things that I needed to do. But just reserving time and blocking time. A rule that I really love, especially when it comes to estimating how long it takes to get something done, is called Parkinsons Law. Parkinson was actually a comedian back in the early 1900s, and he was talking about the inefficiencies in the government. And so Parkinson said that work expands to fill the time allotted to it. So in other words, if I say this is going to take 4 hours, it will magically take 4 hours. So you ever have that in some of your projects where people create an estimate and they say, well, I guess this will take about 2 weeks because they're not putting a lot of thought or consideration into it, it'll magically take 4 weeks. So Parkinson's Law is that work expands to fill the time allotted to it. Sometimes we see this as like the student syndrome, where they don't do the work, they procrastinate until the very last minute, and they stay up all night to get the thing done. So it really didn't take them a week. They could have done it, with much more control. I never did that, of course. I'm sure you didn't either. But the problem with when people create bloated estimates, so they put some padding into it, like let's say it will take 5 days to complete the task, and the individual says, well, I want to put a couple extra days on there if something goes wrong. So they say, well, 7 days. So they have 7 days to do 5 days of work within it. It kind of floats in there. So the problem is they might not do anything Monday or Tuesday, and then they start on Wednesday, the third day, and they hope that nothing goes wrong in the remainder of the work. And then what happens inevitably, something goes wrong and it ends up taking even longer than the original estimate. So we want to set tight deadlines, and we want to avoid Parkinson's Law. Oh, something that I struggle with in my life, there are many things, but one thing is this idea of overcommitting. I get asked all the time, will you come speak to our PMI chapter? Will you talk to our group? Will you do XYZ? And I'm often want to do that. I want to be helpful. And so I say, yeah, I could do that. And then I get stressed about it because I have my regular work, I have things that I'm writing, and now I have to do a webinar or whatnot. So it's like I like to do it, but I have to really balance. I can't do everything, as I've learned, or you just get stressed out and it's too much. So don't overcommit. Another little approach we can try when it comes to getting things done is the 2-minute rule. This is something that I love to do on Fridays. That as my desk gets cluttered or my to-do list gets cluttered, or if there are things that I have to get done, I just go through that list or look at my desk, and if it takes 2 minutes or less to do, I'll just do it now. So what happens is things begin to snowball and pile up. Those are little things and I'll get to it. But if I can get it done in 2 minutes or less, just do it right now. I usually do that on Friday just to clear off the clutter and get things out of my way for next week. Now, one thing that if you're like me that you procrastinate with or you struggle with is procrastination. Yes, I procrastinate on getting better at procrastination. So procrastination is really just a theft of your time. You have to live with that dread of getting the thing done, like going to the dentist or tax day or going to the gym or doing that big report or tackling that project. It's often the things that you don't want to do are the things that you should do. So it's easy to procrastinate. Well, we get back to that idea of eat that frog first. So tackle it. So procrastination, we have to come up with strategies. You ever make deals with yourself? If I do this, work on this, then I take a break. If I do this for a little bit, then I get to watch that show or whatever. And I do that. That's the Pomodoro Technique in a way. Well, it helps to understand, well, what are the root causes of procrastination? What are you afraid of? What are you doubting? What is unpleasant about this? And sometimes those are all valid reasons, but we still have to do the thing. So understanding the root cause of procrastination can help us take it head on and get into tackle what the thing is to get done. Of course, we can take that thing that we're procrastinating and break that down into smaller items. We decompose it into smaller chunks of work, and then we could just take little pieces to work towards the thing to get done. We can also use accountability partners. So for example, in my business and projects that I work on, in my health goals, I have accountability partners where we check in with each other and hold each other accountable and give each other some grief if we're not getting things done. So that helps to overcome procrastination. Now, this is something that I learned about just recently, the Zeigarnik effect. So this effect, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I just read about this. I thought it was very interesting. But the idea being that when you have tasks that are not done, they stay in your brain. So on one hand, it's kind of like brain clutter, that you think about those things that you have yet to do. But on the other hand, we could use this for focus and motivation. Because it's on our mind, we can think about that and work through that, and we can break that into smaller steps to actually start taking action. So I thought about this. It's like, I don't think about the activities that I have done. Once I finish a project, my brain can dismiss it. It's not being pondered and puzzled up in my noggin. But the things that I have yet to do, yeah, those are on the forefront of my mind, even if I'm dreading them or dealing with procrastination. So by realizing that my brain's saying, hey, this is a puzzle that you have to do, this is a thing that you have to accomplish, then I say, okay, well, how can I do that? Because the brain likes to work things out. What's logic and reason? So it's a pretty interesting effect that I just learned about recently, and it makes a lot of sense. Another thing that we can do are implementation intentions. So it's really scheduling, that idea of time blocking. So specific plans for when, where, how will you get things done. So by scheduling this work, I know that on Wednesday I have to do this, or on Friday morning I'm doing this. That it prepares us, it allows us to compartmentalize that work, time boxing the work, and that helps us know, okay, that's scheduled, that work is scheduled, we're actually gonna do it then. I don't have to make a decision now, what am I gonna work on? It's been scheduled, like we saw in that Eisenhower Matrix. And of course, there are all sorts of apps and tools and software that you could use to track your time, your calendaring and scheduling software, all sorts of time tracking tools and little apps that you could use. I'm a fan of whatever works, that's what you should use. I'm not gonna say one is better than the other. I'm a little bit old-fashioned. I just use my software, my calendaring, and I have a list that I go over every day of what I have to get done for the day. Now, one thing that I've learned this year is I have to schedule time for me to take care of Joe. I have to have mindfulness and self-care. I need to prioritize my mental and physical well-being. That I need time to decompress. I need downtime. I can't just go. Maybe I did when I was a little bit younger, but I've learned that life is tough, life is not fair, and it's important to practice some mindfulness techniques, to just do some breathing techniques, to go for a walk. For me, I do a little journaling and some writing about what's going on in my life, and to take time to reflect and to have a break and to rest. To really rest and to recharge your batteries. So I think it's important to schedule that as well. So I try every day. Let's see, try is a deceptive word. Every day I want to go for a walk. Start my day off with a nice walk, and I can ponder and think through what I want to get done for the day. Make certain that I go to bed at night. So a new thing that I started doing, in addition to my alarm in the morning, time to get up, I have an alarm for when it's time to go to bed. Because sometimes I have a tendency to be a night owl, that I make sure I get out of bed. So when it's time to get up in the morning, I count 1, 2, 3, and out of bed. So when that alarm goes off, I try to hit snooze over and over. Sure, sometimes I do, like probably all of us do. But often what I do is I just go, when that alarm hits, I say 1, 2, 3, and get out of bed. And I try to get up at 5 a.m. and start my day and get stuff done. Now, what works for me may not work for you. These are just some ideas that I've used in my life that maybe you could use in your life too. So find something that works for you. If you're struggling to get things done, explore some of these ideas. Leave some comments below. I want to hear about your tips and tricks about what you use to get things done. So I'm curious, what are some tools, what are some activities, some mindsets that you have to overcome procrastination, or how do you tackle a big project? Let me know, let other people know. Let's learn from each other. One of the beauties of being online. All right, thank you for your time and attention, and as always, keep moving forward.